I think it's important to remember that the tool we're discussing here, XPRIZE Incentivized Innovation, is a subheader under the broader topic of innovation, something that we all have a stake in. And I think that in order to not lose sight of what some of the fundamental principles are, I won't talk about only the platform of Innocentive. A lot of what I have to say would apply across platforms. It would apply to XPRIZE, it would apply to Topcoder, which you heard a little bit about earlier today, and other similar systems, Vencore, even among those. I can't help, though, but fall back on some examples from Innocentive, and the reason's fairly simple. Is since it was launched, it has posted over 800 prize challenges and has awarded over 400 prizes in response to those challenges. So we've got actual data. We have a large enough system here that we can start to look at it and to think about it and to analyze it and to make some sense out of how these systems work. And the first thing I'd like to dispel is any notion that this is a conversation about either or. Either we do it the old way or we do it the new way. Either we use closed innovation or we use the open innovation. This is a conversation about both and. This is about how you use closed innovation effectively in a world that allows you to use open innovation as well as allowing you to use prize incentivized innovation. I'm a big fan of closed innovation. I probably always will be, but it has its particular role, and in today's innovation world, we need to identify and clarify that role as just assuming it's the default as it's been in the past. The organizers had asked that we perhaps try to tell a story, so I've got a story from graduate school. 35 years ago, can barely remember it, but I took one course at a decent university, good students, tough competition, and in that course, we'd always checked with the previous classmates to find out, was there any inside track we could figure out, a way to be more effective, get a better grade is what it kind of boiled down to. And we were given one consistent piece of advice, which is drop all your other courses. Don't plan on getting any research done. If you take this class, it'll be the only thing you do. And in the course of a semester, if I added up all the problem assignments on the homework, I added up all of the exam questions, and I added up everything on the final, it came to 10 problems. 10 problems was the entire course. But they were tough. They were meaty problems. They were rich problems. They were complicated problems. And it wasn't so much that I learned how to do that particular class of problems or that I learned that I could do that particular class of problems. What struck me was that each Wednesday evening when the class would meet for its long 6-hour session, we would look at the problems and the solutions that had been submitted by other class members. And I don't remember a single instance in which of the 25 class members that two turned in the same solution. And later, when I got into industry, in the pharmaceutical industry, I was given assignments as a researcher. And what always struck me is, oh my gosh, I've got an idea for how to tackle this problem, but where are the 24 other ideas? The ones that I know that my classmates would have come up with that would have been different approaches to the problem. And when I tried to rewind how it was that there were 24 distinct approaches, each night those assignments were analyzed, it had nothing to do with the training those students had received. They'd all come from good universities. They'd all been through very similar coursework. What made the difference between the way each of them chose to answer a given problem was something usually completely independent. It was some aha, some synchronization between their set of unique experiences and the task at hand. It was a bee sting. It was the making of a peanut butter and jelly sandwich and the way the peanut butter always rips the bread up. I remember going back and trying to think, what were my thought processes on one of the problems? And it was asking my father, what's the chemical structure of the cream of tartar? Because, it was a nice looking white powder, looked like the sort of thing you might have gotten out of a Gilbert chemistry set. He explained what the structure of that was, and later I realized I'm using that kind of knowledge in solving this particular problem. So when Eli Lilly launched Innocentive, they're an old school pharma company. It had been 125 years that they had been dependent on innovation. We did it because we realized there were at least 3 things that classic modes of innovation cannot do. And it was important that we find a new mechanism for doing those three things. One, we could not afford to perform a massively parallel attack on solution space. We just couldn't afford it. We couldn't go out and secure contracts for 25 unique approaches to that problem and pay time and materials. We needed a different organization model, and we needed a different economic model to tackle that. Number two, we could not find Archimedes as he lowered himself in the tub. We know the story of Archimedes, and we know how important the tub is. What we don't have is we don't have lore that talks about all the geometers who got their heads lopped off by kings for not figuring out how to define the volume of an irregularly shaped object, because those stories don't survive on. It's those ahas that survive on, and we knew that just giving a bath to all of our R&D staff was not going to be sufficient to produce that happy coincidence between experience, challenge, and training. And the third thing that it couldn't do is it could not fairly democratize innovation. We have built a system of innovation, especially in the sciences, the technologies. I realize innovation goes across all facets of life, and I'm being a little specific here. But we've built a system in which you have privileged access. You have privileged access based on the degrees you have. You have privileged access based on the disciplines you studied, based on the universities you went to, based on the previous papers you've published, based on the prizes that you've won. And that privileged access gives you a right to work on problems, whether you're the best qualified to solve that particular problem or not. And it's this lack of democratization, which in some instances is the blockade to the solution of the problem. As Thomas Kuhn, a scientific philosopher, wrote, new ideas often come from those new to a field or from outside the field, where they're not biased by the paradigms that they're forced to think within. And then finally, let me just talk about the way in which this enables new organizational structures. Actually, I'd planned on saying more about this. Don did a fantastic job earlier in the day walking through what some of these principles were, the ones articulated by Coase. And as Don pointed out, but maybe he didn't just pound it home, was when Coase looked for a transaction cost to cite as a barrier, he invariably cited search. In 1937, it just wasn't Google. And the whole dismantling of some of these transaction costs says that our organizations, whether they be philanthropic organizations or commercial organizations, need to think about this ability to distribute work in a new, more democratic way and bring solutions to the problems that will eventually lead to organization structures far different than those that we have today. Thanks.